What if you knew exactly when your time was up? Would you binge watch that show everyone's talking about, or finally book that trip to Fiji? It's a funny thing, this life. We spend so much of it worrying about things we can't control, especially that whole inevitable death thing. But what if, just what if, thinking about our eventual demise was actually the key to, actually living? Sounds crazy, right? Well, buckle up, Buttercup, because we're about to dive headfirst into the deep end of existentialism. Don't worry, we'll bring the floaties and maybe a stiff drink. The truth is, we're all living with a ticking time bomb. No, not the kind strapped to a cartoon coyote, but the kind that reminds us our time on this planet is finite. Now, before you click away to watch cat videos, we get it, they're adorable. Consider this. What if this awareness, this understanding of our limited time could actually set us free? Free from the fear of failure, free from the chains of other people's expectations, free to squeeze every last drop out of this messy, beautiful, utterly ridiculous thing we call life. Let's be real, nobody likes a deadline. They're the ultimate buzzkill, hovering over our to-do list like a grumpy landlord demanding rent. But here's the kicker. Death, my friends, is the ultimate deadline. It's the cosmic reminder that this whole being alive gig isn't a dress rehearsal, it's the main event. So why waste precious time sweating the small stuff? Why let fear hold us back from chasing our wildest dreams, from expressing our truest selves, from embracing all the messy, unpredictable, exhilarating experiences that make life worth living? We've all heard those cheesy sayings about life being short, but cliches become cliches for a reason, right? Deep down, we know there's a kernel of truth in those well-worn phrases. We know that time is precious, that tomorrow is never guaranteed, that we should be living each day like it's our last, although maybe with slightly better hygiene. So why don't we? Why do we let fear, doubt, and societal expectations keep us playing small when we could be living large? Here's a radical thought. What if we could cheat death? Not in a creepy Dorian Gray kind of way, but by truly squeezing the marrow out of life. What if, instead of fearing death, we embraced its inevitability and used it as fuel to live more intentionally, more passionately, more authentically? This isn't about becoming reckless daredevils or throwing caution to the wind, although a little healthy risk-taking never hurt anyone. It's about recognizing that our time is limited and choosing to spend it on what truly matters. It's about giving ourselves permission to pursue our passions, to connect deeply with others, to laugh loudly and love fiercely, and to leave this world knowing we lived without regrets. Sounds pretty good, right? So how do we do it? How do we shift our perspective from fear-based to freedom-driven? How do we stop simply existing and start truly living? Well, my friends, that's the million-dollar question. And lucky for you, we've got a whole lot more to explore. Stay tuned, because things are about to get interesting and maybe a little uncomfortable. But hey, what's life without a little discomfort, right? Remember that dusty old phrase from Latin class, memento mori? Yeah, the one that roughly translates to, remember you must die. Cheerful, right? Turns out our ancestors were onto something. Throughout history, folks haven't exactly shied away from the whole death thing. In fact, they often embraced it. We're talking about ancient cultures who built elaborate tombs, worshipped death deities, and even had a good chuckle at death's expense. Take the ancient Egyptians, for example. They were obsessed with the afterlife, spending their lives preparing for their grand journey to the underworld. They even had a guidebook, the Book of the Dead, to help them navigate the afterlife's treacherous pathways. Talk about taking your travel plans seriously. Then there were the ancient Romans, who weren't afraid to give death a front row seat in their daily lives. They had these things called memento mori mosaics, little reminders of mortality, embedded right in their fancy villas. Imagine sipping wine on your patio while staring at a skull and crossbones mosaic. Talk about a conversation starter. These guys knew how to keep it real. The point is, our ancestors understood that death wasn't something to be feared or ignored. It was an integral part of life, a constant companion on their earthly journey. Dancing with death, from ancient rituals to modern angst. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but those were ancient civilizations. We're modern, enlightened folk. We've got smartphones and Netflix and therapy to distract us from the whole death thing. And you're right, to some extent. We've come a long way from building pyramids and mummifying our pharaohs. But Here's the thing. While our relationship with death has evolved, we haven't exactly escaped its grasp. In many ways, we've become even more detached from death. We sanitize it, medicalize it, and tuck it away in hospitals and funeral homes. It's become this taboo topic, something we avoid discussing at all costs, like that weird uncle who shows up to family gatherings uninvited. But just because we ignore death doesn't mean it goes away. In fact, this avoidance can actually make our fear and anxiety around death even stronger. It's like trying to ignore a monster under the bed. It doesn't disappear, it just festers in the darkness, growing more terrifying in our imaginations. Remember the ancient cultures who danced with death, who incorporated it into their art, their rituals, their daily lives. They weren't being morbid, they were being pragmatic. They understood that acknowledging death's presence didn't diminish life's beauty, it enhanced it. The existentialists were onto something. No, really? Okay, enough history lessons for now. Let's talk about some brainy folks who really dug into this whole death thing. The existentialists, Sartre, Camus, Simone de Beauvoir, those French philosophers who loved to ponder life's big questions in smoky cafes. Now, existentialism can get a bit heavy, but at its core, it's all about embracing our freedom and responsibility in the face of a meaningless universe. And guess what plays a starring role in this existential drama? You guessed it, death. See, the existentialists believe that our awareness of death is what gives life meaning. It's the ultimate motivator, the cosmic kick in the pants that reminds us our time is limited and we better make it count. As Jean-Paul Sartre famously said, man is condemned to be free. We're thrown into this world without a script, without a predetermined purpose. It's up to us to create our own meaning, to define our own values, to live a life that's authentic to who we are. Now, this might sound a bit daunting, even terrifying, but here's the liberating part. If nothing truly matters in the grand scheme of things, then we're free to choose what matters to us. We're free to pursue our passions, to challenge the status quo, to live a life that's true to ourselves, even if it means going against the grain. We no longer need to live by society's rules or other people's expectations. We can create our own rules, forge our own paths, and embrace the absurdity and beauty of it all. The paradox of choice and the fear of missing out. FOMO. Here's the irony of our modern age. We have more choices than ever before, yet we often feel more paralyzed by them. We're bombarded with options, from endless Netflix queues to Instagram-worthy travel destinations. It's like being a kid in a candy store, except the candy store is the size of a small planet, and you only have a limited number of bites. Enter the dreaded FOMO, the fear of missing out. It's that nagging voice in the back of our heads whispering, shouldn't you be doing something else? Experiencing something more, living a more Instagrammable life? This fear-driven mentality keeps us trapped on a hamster wheel of comparison and consumption. We're constantly chasing the next best thing, the next experience, the next dopamine hit, all in a desperate attempt to outrun the fear of missing out. But here's the thing about FOMO. It's a bottomless pit. There will always be another adventure, another experience, another highlight reel to envy. And in our pursuit of everything, we risk experiencing nothing fully. We become so busy checking things off our bucket list that we forget to savor the moments that make up a life well lived. The truth is, living a meaningful life isn't about cramming in as many experiences as possible. It's about choosing what truly matters to us and giving those experiences our full attention, our full presence. Section 2. From fear-driven to freedom-driven, the power of perspective. So, how do we break free from the clutches of FOMO and step into a more freedom-driven existence? It starts with a shift in perspective. Instead of focusing on all the things we could be doing or experiencing, we can choose to appreciate the present moment, the here and now. This doesn't mean we can't have goals or dreams or aspirations. It simply means we don't let the pursuit of those things rob us of the joy in the journey. Remember, death is a reminder, not a threat. It's a cosmic nudge to stop postponing our happiness and start living with intention. When we embrace the reality of our mortality, we're able to let go of the things that don't truly matter. We stop sweating the small stuff, we stop seeking validation from others, and we start prioritizing the things that bring us joy, purpose, and connection. This shift in perspective allows us to approach life with a sense of curiosity and wonder rather than fear and scarcity. We become more open to new experiences, more willing to take risks, more present in our relationships. Section 3, the stories we tell ourselves, rewriting the narrative of fear. Our relationship with death, like most things in life, is often shaped by the stories we tell ourselves. We create narratives about what it means to die, what happens after we die, and how we should live our lives in light of this inevitability. These stories can be empowering or debilitating depending on the narrative we choose to believe. If we cling to stories of fear and loss, we'll likely live our lives in a state of perpetual anxiety, constantly trying to outrun the inevitable. But if we choose to rewrite the narrative, to embrace stories of courage, acceptance, and growth, we can transform our relationship with death from one of fear to one of liberation. This isn't about denying the reality of death or pretending it doesn't exist. It's about acknowledging its presence and choosing to focus on the opportunities that arise from this awareness. When we confront our mortality, we're forced to examine our values, our priorities, and the legacy we want to leave behind. We become more conscious of the impact we have on others and the world around us. Section 4, Living Fully, Dying Well, Embracing the Inevitability. Living fully and dying well are two sides of the same coin. We can't have one without the other. When we embrace the inevitability of death, we're able to live our lives with greater intention, purpose, and joy. We're no longer afraid to take risks, to pursue our passions, to love deeply and authentically. We recognize that every moment is precious, every interaction a gift, every breath a miracle. This isn't about becoming reckless or throwing caution to the wind. It's about living with a sense of urgency and gratitude, knowing that our time on this planet is finite and choosing to make the most of every moment. It's about squeezing the marrow out of life, as Thoreau so eloquently put it, and leaving this world knowing we lived without regrets. So as you go about your day, remember this. You are going to die, but don't despair, my friend. Embrace this truth, let it fuel your passions, and live a life that makes this cosmic joke we call existence a little bit funnier, a little bit brighter, and a whole lot more meaningful. All right, let's get practical, shall we? If this whole remembering you're going to die thing is actually going to improve your life, you'll need some tools. Think of it like a mental toolbox, but instead of rusty wrenches and mismatched screws, it's filled with existential pondering and maybe a few cheesy metaphors for good measure. First up, the what the hell checklist. This isn't your grandma's grocery list, folks. This is about identifying those niggling desires, those someday dreams that you've been putting off for fear, doubt, or a serious case of, I don't have time, that trip to Italy you've always dreamt of. On the list, writing that novel that's been swirling in your head since college? You betcha. Asking your crush out for coffee even if they say no? Absolutely. Here's the thing. When you approach life with the understanding that it could all end tomorrow, suddenly those what-ifs and maybes seem a whole lot less important. What's the worst that could happen? You fail, you get rejected, you realize Italy looks even better in person. These aren't failures, my friend, they're experiences, they're stories. They're proof that you're actually living, not just existing. So go ahead, grab that dusty notepad and start jotting down all those things you'd regret not doing if you were on your deathbed, metaphorically speaking, of course. Here's a secret. Nobody has it all figured out. Not even those Instagram influencers with their perfectly curated lives and perpetually sunny dispositions. Seriously, how do they do it? Here's another secret that's totally okay. In fact, it's more than okay, it's liberating. See, when we buy into the myth of perfection, we set ourselves up for a whole lot of unnecessary suffering. We become so afraid of failure, of judgment, of not measuring up that we avoid taking risks altogether. We stick to our comfort zones, playing it safe, living a life that's, well, kind of boring. But here's the thing about embracing your inner suckage. It allows you to actually try things, to experiment, to fail gloriously, and then get back up and try again. It frees you from the shackles of other people's expectations and gives you permission to define success on your own terms. So go ahead, learn to play that instrument you've always wanted to, even if you sound like a dying walrus at first. Write that book, even if the first draft makes your eyes bleed. Ask that person out, even if your voice cracks and your palms sweat. Embrace the suck, my friend, because in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter. What matters is that you're trying, that you're growing, that you're living a life that's authentically yours. Remember that scene in Fight Club where Tyler Durden says, "The things you own end up owning you"? Yeah, well, he wasn't just talking about your overflowing closet or that collection of ceramic frog figurines. We all have our quirks, right? He was talking about the weight of material possessions, of outdated beliefs, of toxic relationships, all the things that clutter our lives and prevent us from living freely and authentically. Letting go is never easy. It requires us to confront our attachments, our fears, and the stories we tell ourselves about what we need to be happy. But here's the thing, when we let go of what no longer serves us, we create space for something new, something better, something more aligned with who we truly are. This could mean decluttering your physical space, getting rid of clothes you haven't worn in years, donating books you'll never read, or finally tackling that junk drawer that's been taunting you for years. It could also mean decluttering your mental space, challenging limiting beliefs, letting go of past hurts, and forgiving yourself and others for mistakes made. Remember, death is the ultimate equalizer. It reminds us that we can't take our material possessions with us, but we can choose what we carry in our hearts and minds. Section 4, Legacy over Currency, Investing in What Matters. In a world obsessed with likes, followers, and the relentless pursuit of more, it's easy to lose sight of what truly matters. We chase after fleeting measures of success, sacrificing our time, energy, and values for the sake of external validation. But here's a radical thought. What if we shifted our focus from currency to legacy? What if, instead of chasing fleeting measures of success, we invested in something more enduring, something that would outlive our physical existence? This isn't about achieving fame or fortune or carving our names into stone monuments. It's about living a life that matters, a life that leaves a positive impact on the world, a life that inspires others to be their best selves. This could mean investing in your relationships, nurturing deep and meaningful connections with loved ones. It could mean pursuing your passions, using your unique talents and gifts to make a difference in the world. It could mean simply being kind, compassionate, and present in your interactions with others, leaving a trail of positivity in your wake. Remember, death is a reminder that our time on this planet is limited, but our impact can be far-reaching. Choose to invest in what truly matters, and your legacy will live on long after you're gone. Remember that joke we made earlier about existentialism? Well, here's the punchline. You're the comedian, your life is the setup, and death is the punchline waiting to happen. Sounds morbid, maybe a little, but it's also kind of hilarious when you think about it. We spend so much time stressing, overthinking, and comparing ourselves to others that we forget the most important thing: to enjoy the show, to embrace the absurdity of it all, to laugh at our own cosmic insignificance. See, when you accept death as the inevitable punchline to your existence, it changes the way you deliver every joke, every story, every interaction. Suddenly the pressure's off. You're free to experiment, to bomb spectacularly, to tell that joke that only your best friend finds funny, because who cares? We're all headed for the same cosmic curtain call, so why not go out with a bang, or at least a chuckle? The next time you find yourself spiraling down a rabbit hole of worry and self-doubt, remember this. It's all a joke, a beautiful, messy, utterly absurd joke. So relax, enjoy the ride, and don't forget to laugh along the way. Who knows, you might even inspire a few chuckles from the audience in the process. Let's face it, fear can be a real buzzkill. It keeps us stuck in our comfort zones, whispering doubts in our ears, and generally preventing us from living our best lives. But here's the thing about death. It's the ultimate wingman when it comes to conquering fear. Think about it. That thing you're terrified of doing, asking for that raise, starting that creative project, finally messaging that attractive barista. All those fears, those what ifs and what will people think suddenly seem a lot less daunting when you realize that one day none of it will matter. Death whispers in your ear, go for it, chap. What's the worst that could happen? You die? Been there, done that. Metaphorically speaking, of course. Suddenly, that fear-induced paralysis transforms into, what the hell, let's do this kind of energy. You become bolder, more willing to take risks, more open to embracing the unknown. You start saying yes to opportunities that scare you a little, or a lot, because you realize that life is too short to let fear call the shots. Death, in its own strange way, becomes your biggest cheerleader, urging you to step outside your comfort zone and finally live a life that makes you come alive. Remember that feeling you get when you watch a truly great performance? The kind that leaves you breathless, inspired, and maybe a little bit jealous? That's the beauty of life, my friends. It's a stage, and we're all players in this grand, chaotic, and utterly unpredictable production. The problem is we often forget we're part of the show. We get so caught up in our lines, our costumes, and the fear of forgetting our cues that we forget to actually perform. We go through the motions, playing it safe, blending into the background, afraid to stand out or make a mistake. But here's the thing, there are no dress rehearsals in life, there's no rewind button, no second chances, no do-overs. This is it, the only performance that matters is the one you're giving right now, in this moment. So what are you waiting for? Embrace your role, however big or small. Deliver your lines with passion and conviction. Dance like nobody's watching, even if they are. And when it's your time to take a bow, do it with the knowledge that you poured your heart and soul into every single scene. You might not always get a standing ovation, but trust me, the universe appreciates a good performance. So we've reached the end of our little existential journey. We've explored the depth of our mortality, confronted our fears, and maybe even cracked a few jokes along the way. But now what? What do you do with this newfound awareness of your own inevitable demise? Well, my friend, that's entirely up to you. The beauty of it all is that there's no right or wrong answer, no one-size-fits-all approach to this whole living your best life thing. But if there's one piece of advice I can leave you with, it's this. Don't waste this precious, fleeting, utterly ridiculous gift we call life. Embrace the absurdity, challenge the status quo, dance with your fears, love fiercely and authentically. And above all else, remember to laugh along the way, because in the end, my friend, it's all just a cosmic joke, and you, my dear, are the punchline. Make it a good one.